Feeling shut down can make it really hard to enjoy and engage with life. And so in this video, I'm hoping that by the end, you will feel that much more clear on how you can begin to shift out of the shutdown state. I'll also call it the dorsal vagal shutdown state because it's that part of the vagus nervous system that's just like bottom of the ladder kind of thing. Um, so, what is being shut down to begin with? It can look in a various different ways, but it can be just a general feeling, a feeling shut down, like it's a very heavy feeling. You might even feel almost like you're being like held back or pushed down. Um, you can be in a state where you feel absolutely drained, like you could not generate the energy to do things if you wanted to, very fatigued. There's an anxiety with it that sometimes, at least in my experience, sometimes I could feel it and sometimes I could not. Um, I've personally been through many years dealing with trying to pull myself out of this shutdown state. Um, it's very difficult to communicate with people in this state. It can be very difficult to even focus on something. Like you feel like you're focusing on something, but you're kind of not really there. Like you could be aware that, hey, someone's talking to you or a situation's happening, but your mind is like somewhere else. And it's like it almost feels like you're in two spaces at once. Sometimes, if there's this numbness that's with it, which often happens, it kind of feels like you're at no place at once sometimes. And it's really hard to, it's very painful, like to enjoy things that way. It's very hard to engage with people like authentically because you're not really in the present moment when you're in that state. And I'd like to preface that there's nothing that you have done wrong at all. There's nothing that you did wrong or that someone else did that put you in that state. Um, there's this book called The Body Keeps the Score. It's a really good book about trauma, and a lot of times shutdown can be a response to a trigger that the nervous system finds traumatic, whether it was what people would consider like your typical pictures of trauma, like seeing violence, or even if it's like what some people might consider more of a mini trauma where it may not be seen as an extreme trauma, but to your nervous system, it was a shakeup. Um, and so, a lot of times, at least for me, when I was in that state, it was very hard to be present and it was hard to feel safe in the body because you kind of, your energy feels so split and it feels so, um, like it's going to many different places and like it's going somewhere and you don't really know where it's going all the time. That it doesn't feel safe to be in the body because in the body, like for me, when I started to try and come back into the body, because that is really the only way that I know of to come out of a shutdown state other than the trigger passing, which sometimes you don't even know what the trigger is. It's just, you're just in that state. Um, in order to come through that, that means you have to kind of come through the sensations of the body. And that's where I discovered that for me, like there was a lot of anxiety in my body. And, there still is. But the amount of anxiety was so intense being in that shutdown state. And sometimes I could even feel both at the same time, where it's like half of my body is like feeling that numbness, that shut down, like that just really bogged down feeling. And then the other half was feeling super anxious, like, what is going on here? Like, it was just, it's a very uncomfortable and uncanny feeling. Um, but what my body was trying to do when that happened was it was trying to come up that ladder throughout, it was trying to come out from that shutdown state through the sympathetic, that's your fight or flight type stuff, that's your fight or flight state, to get to that ladder of peace, relaxation, like calm state, your parasympathetic state. Um, and so while it can sometimes feel scary to come back into the body, I found that that really is the only way to come out of that shutdown state and to be able to engage with life. The challenge is going through that sympathetic state to get to that parasympathetic, that top of the ladder, feeling very calm, peaceful, grounded state. Because when you're in a shutdown state, you're not really grounded. It felt like that to me sometimes, that I was grounded because I felt calmer in a sense. I felt calmer than if I was in a panic state trying to go up the ladder to get to the parasympathetic. But what I found was that the anxiety would still be there whether I felt it or not. So I was like, by staying in the shutdown state, I was essentially giving myself double dose pain and suffering. Um, and so because of this, I really feel that coming back into the body, but not just coming back into it. We don't want to just come back and stay in the anxious fight or flight tense states, right? We want to have a positive experience and relationship with our bodies. So instead of having, by working through and creating positive, nourishing, I like to use even more than positive, nourishing memories and experiences of being in our bodies, we can then spend more time at the top of the ladder, which is, again, feeling grounded, feeling centered, feeling peaceful, feeling more ourselves, really. Because when I was in that state, it was hard to feel like myself. But when I'm in that state of like relaxation, but still alert, there you can still be alert and still feel relaxed at the same time. Cats are in that state all the time. They're in that alpha brainwave state a lot. Um, and in order to get to that those states and be able to stay in them for longer periods of time, it does take sometimes going through that middle layer of that sympathetic nervous system response. um, I won't say it's easy. It is not an easy thing to do, but by taking it step by step at a time and just being with where we are at in the moment, we're not, that by itself lightens up any extra pressure that could be put on ourselves when we start to get really um, when we start to get really avoidant, like trying to avoid the discomfort of that anxiety and that panic, or maybe thinking the thought that if I go into that anxiety and panic, I'm going to lose control, you know, various different beliefs that we can carry in our systems that can keep us really stuck. Um, and then it can really help create a cycle of being anxious, shut down, anxious, shut down. Um, when instead we could go through a cycle of being open and, you know, centered, grounded, more energy in our systems because our energy isn't leaking to multiple places at once. And then getting to a point where we have enough flexibility where if we do end up experiencing a trigger, and we do end up in our anxious or panic space, we can let that move through naturally instead of it getting stuck and go right back up the ladder to our parasympathetic, our calm, nourished, energetic state. And say we do run into a trigger and we drop back down at the bottom of the ladder, because that does still happen for me. Having the tools to be able to bring myself out of there and be able to do it in a smoother, kinder, lighter fashion. And being able to do that without always having to go through an extremely intense anxiety layer. Because I've noticed that anxiety layer has shifted some since I've started using various tools and mindfulness techniques to get out of shutdown. Um, it just makes the experience a lot more smoother, a lot more simpler. It's just that initial breaking the pattern, you know? Um, and if you're watching this video, if you made it this far into the video, I know that you are making some great strides. You are making the shifts, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment. We don't always feel our shifts like as they're happening. Sometimes it's like a backlog, you know? But I know that you are absolutely capable of making it through these layers, these onion layers, if you want to call them that too, and being able to really sit within yourself with a level of safety and nourishment that you may not have even known was possible for you. If you want to start exploring some of these techniques, I do have Yoga Nidra videos available. Yoga Nidra is a deep rest kind of meditative process where you get to go through various different mindfulness techniques. And there's a lot of focus on deep rest, effortlessness, really being in the body, and really being attuned to what's going on in your inner world, which is going to be really key to getting out of those states. So I will put a link for one of these Yoga Nidra videos for you to check out. You can certainly check out some yoga videos on my channel. And with that said, I hope to see you guys in another video.